Transform your career, business, life, and relationships. This is the Growth to Freedom Show. Now, here is your host, Dan Kuschell.
Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. I'm Dan Kuschell, and thanks for making us part of your day. Today's a celebration of you. That's right, it's a celebration of you. Dr. Cristy Lopez is here with us today, and we are here to celebrate something special. Number one, you. Number two, this celebrates our 6-month anniversary of the show. This is show number 26, 6 months. We've had over 110,000 views and downloads, new and noteworthy on iTunes. So this is a celebration of sorts. And you know what? That means you like what we have to share. And today, we are going to bring you something special. In fact, if you had to stop and think right now, if you're in your mind's eye, if you will, what are you wired for? Have you been wired for success? Do you feel like you've been wired for failure? Or maybe you're already successful and you're like, oh, I'm already successful. Well, how about being wired to go to that next level? Well, today we've got a great show. We're going to provide you more clarity, confidence, mastery, growth, freedom, direction. Also, the show is presented by doneforyousolutions.com. We'd love to connect with you. You can join us on Twitter at Dan_Kuschell. That's Dan_KUSCHELL. Or email us at info@growthtofreedom.com. That's info@growthtofreedom.com. Now, we are going to give you a special celebratory gift, if you will, a resource package that we'll talk about later on in the show overall. So we're going to dive into it. So let's talk about wiring. I mean, if you're driving right now, be careful. Don't hit anybody. But yes. If you're not driving, you may want to jot some notes, get a pen, get a piece of paper. If you're driving, I'd probably go back and re-listen to this show because I have a feeling what Dr. Lopez is going to reveal to you today is going to change the way you think about building your bigger future, about building towards the things that you really want, right? You know, I was thinking about it, Dr. Lopez. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you don't know who Dr. Lopez is, if you're just joining us, Dr. Lopez is a psychologist. She's been on Dr. Phil, Downsized. She's a regular media guest and expert. We're fortunate, blessed to have her a part of the show. And she's a wealth of wisdom. She's an expert at helping people go through transition in their career, life, business, relationships. I got a chance to meet her 5+ years ago, right? Yeah. I was going through an interesting time at that, and we got a chance to meet and connect. You took me through a series of exercises, and I have. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of yours, as you know.
And likewise.
And now we get to work together, which is kind of awesome.
Yes.
Not kind of awesome.
Yeah,
it really is awesome.
Yes.
I got to watch the language. That's soft language.
Yes.
Right? You're big on the language
Very
thing.
good. Yeah, I am big on the language.
Yes. So as you're watching right now or listening, I was thinking about years ago, actually, like what framed the topic of the show. And I remember I used to run ads in the paper, right, to attract certain types of people. And I had one ad that I ran. It was called Frustrated with a question mark.
Okay.
And then it had the copy, and then we would get a boatload of calls.
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
And I remember running that ad. I don't know. I must have ran that particular ad for, a month, 6 weeks. Hundreds of people. And I remember after about 6 weeks going, wow, why are all these people so angry? Right? And then I had this brilliant idea. Change the ad, right?
Okay,
because I was like, God, these people, and you know what? I changed the headline. The only thing I changed in the entire ad was the headline. I changed it from frustrated question mark to excited question mark, right?
Yes.
And I got far less calls, about a third less of the calls. So we got about 67% of the total universe of calls over the next 6 weeks. But the people were just more enjoyable to talk to.
Yeah.
And so I bring that up because what are you putting out there, right? You know, what are the things you say to yourself? The things that we say to ourselves oftentimes come true, the things that manifest, right? Have you ever noticed that? Have you also found yourself at a place where you are depressed or you are frustrated many times because of the way you continuously repeat you? I remember the other day with T, right, my wife, we were, in the kitchen, we were running around, we were on our way out to somewhere and I couldn't find my keys, right? Have you ever had this happen where you couldn't find your keys? I'm like, honey, I can't find the keys. I can't find the keys anywhere. And I'm running around the house. I'm going in a couple places. I went and looked on my dresser. I looked over by my bedstand. I went and looked in my closet. Honey, I can't find the keys. And then she walks into the kitchen and they're sitting where they typically
Where they're
always
supposed to
sit
be.
in.
Yeah.
But what it was is another lesson of what we tell ourselves, most of the time. See, it's something as simple as that we anchor and or wire ourselves for, failure or success or super success.
Yeah, and it wasn't a good idea to be repeating, I can't find my keys.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about that and how it relates to you and how you can transform from maybe right now a feeling of failure to success. If you're already success, to go to another level of success overall. And one of the things we want to talk about is a peak state, right? And getting into a peak state is incredibly important. Coming from a sports background, I was fortunate to play a lot of sports, and then I was able to take a lot of the sports rituals that I developed and put them in place in business. And some worked, some didn't, and it's still like a Play-Doh fun factory today. But talk about peak state, Dr. Lopez, and what you have found to be an important role as it applies to life as compared to being, say, an athlete.
Well, I wasn't necessarily a sports person, but I did have a brother that played sports, and I know you're very much into sports, and I do actually use sports as an analogy for many of the things that we do talk about, because there's sports is a microcosm of life. So when it comes to peak performance or peak states, there's usually like a lot of ritual to that, and there's a lot of it's going to kind of go back to this wiring thing, because it's like a neural network in your brain, and all these things that we've talked about before of everything kind of being in alignment, your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, your energy, all of this comes together in a way that complements each other, all for this common goal or state or this place where you're going to be. And your physiology, which is very important, your physiology part comes into it, and it all comes together, and then that like fuses neural network wise. And the more you practice this, you ritualize this, you add to it, you talk about it, you perform it, you do all of these things, it better connects, makes it more dense, and then it's more easy to be accessed. And so you're able to kind of get back into that state almost on whim or with a very easy association, something very quick where you can get right back to that.
And what's interesting, you say that, number one, so as you're listening right now, as you're watching, physiology and psychology work together.
Oh, yeah.
You can't have one without the other, but when you get them to work, that's when you can get amazing things to happen, and it works for you. It can also work against you. The other day, I was having a conversation with a team member, in fact, and one of the things in a previous segment that we've done together, which you can go check out all the segments at growthtofreedom.com. Again, we've had over 6 months, over 110,000 views and downloads of the show. And one of our recent ones that we did, we talked about the Superman pose and the Wonder Woman pose, which is a great example of a way to put yourself in an immediate peak state. Stand up wherever you're at right now, not in your car, obviously,
not in the car.
but stand up and go do something silly like the underdog theme, which is dum da da dum. Here I am to save the day. Now, number one, you can't help but laugh, right?
Yeah.
But it's going to put you in a more energetic, powerful state. Immediately. You just can't not get into that state. And I did this with a team member, and just to watch them
and
go
you sang?
from. And I did. Dum, da, da, dum, here. And I told them to say it, right?
Yeah.
And it was interesting to have, they had to do it 3 times to finally get to a powerful place.
Yeah.
But then their physiology and their psychology was there, and now they were in a far better state than what they started, right?
Yeah.
And as you're watching right now, as you're listening, I want to shift the conversation for a second related to superheroes.
Okay.
Right? And as you're watching, I don't know if you're a superhero fan, but I was brought up this way. And if you're not, well, deal with it.
Okay.
But as a superhero fan, you have all kinds of different superheroes. And what I'd challenge you to do some point today, maybe right now if you've got a pen and paper, is write down, like, number one, who is your if you could be any superhero that is available, what superhero would you pick? Number one. And then number two, really stop and think, what characteristics of that superhero do you admire most, right? What characteristics do you admire most? Now, later on in the show, I want to flip back to this little exercise. I want to tie it back into our entire conversation, because when we were preparing for the show, we said, you know what, let's talk about why most people seem to set goals but then stop and go, and then stop and go. Like, I have a friend of mine who's going through a weight loss regime right now, and they're doing the crash diet, crash exercise thing, and it's not a sustainable lifelong plan.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember when we met, 5+ years ago, you talked about having things that are a sustainable
Yeah.
journey. You
Yeah.
had a lot of different principles.
Yeah.
I know you're going to share some of those today. So let's dive into that. What do you see, Dr. Lopez, is why people, many times New Year's resolutions or goal setting, they set goals, but the achievement part seems to not
Right.
necessarily happen for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit in all your experience.
So people actually tend to be really good at goal setting. Okay?
Right.
So that's the actual setting of the goal. The issue is they're not necessarily so great at goal achieving.
And I call that goal wishes because it becomes more of a wish than
right.
even a goal setting, right?
Yes.
Just in my own head, there's a big
Yeah.
difference between a wish and a goal, and that's being committed to go get it and committed to get it done. So
Yeah.
hit on that a little bit.
Yeah. So part of how you help yourself with this is to change your mindset on how you're conceptualizing this whole area. Okay. So instead of calling it goal setting or goal wishing or goals, really talk about what you're actually trying to have the outcome of achievement. So this is what I'm achieving, which is also a language thing, because I always talk about language, because when you're trying to make a change, if you can talk about what it is that you're doing, like present and going into the future, then that helps your brain to go there. So if you talk about it that way versus, I have these goals that I set, which is already past. Okay.
Yep.
You talk about it in this present kind of future tense way, that helps. Then you're changing your whole mindset to have success around your goals. Okay, so understanding, hey, this is something I'm achieving. This is something that that I have in my mind that we're going to go forward towards, and that the journey is as important as the outcome.
And what's interesting, I think as I look at this and I look at my history and my career, I've certainly set some goals and not achieved some. And then I've also achieved a lot of goals, right? Because I think there's even a step in here. And, I don't know if I heard it from Tony Robbins or if it's something I just picked up on my own or where I picked it up. But number one is that a goal, when it shifts from a maybe
Right.
or a might or a wish to a must is when magic happens.
Yes.
And number two is that really having the confidence that I can really do this, right? What does it take to be able to do this? And you know what? When we come back after the break, we're going to go more into goal achievement. We're going to go more into wiring yourself for success and going to the next level. That and a whole lot more coming up on growthtofreedom.com. To growthtofreedom.com. Are you ready to go to the next level? Do you feel that you're wired to be in a peak performance for success, for achievement, for mastery, for growth, contribution, purpose, passion, joy, contribution, and so much more? Well, today's show, we've got Dr. Cristy Lopez. To give you a recap of the first segment, we started to talk about being wired for success. We've been talking about getting in a peak state. We've been talking about the idea of goal achievement. And at the break, we were kidding about the idea that it's one thing to get into a peak state, right? And we talked about getting into that Wonder Woman or Superman pose, if you will. I use the underdog pose, but I used the example with a team member this week. And, that's a great example. What you brought up is how great would it be to be able to learn how to put yourself into a calm state amidst chaos, right? Because a friend of ours here, one of the people in this room that we're together in, was having a little bit of an anxiety attack, and so they had to anchor themselves for calmness at the moment. So, Dr. Lopez, why don't you share what you taught that person about getting into a calm state amidst chaos at the break?
Well, when we were talking about the peak state, then this was kind of the other thing I was thinking, is because I often do teach people about preparing to be able to associate a calm state so that you can quickly bring that to the forefront. So when things are kind of out there, you can't necessarily in the moment be like, hold on, everybody, let me sit down, let me meditate, let me go through this whole ritual that I do. But what you yes. So people may look at you a little strange. But what you can do is do all that ahead of time, preventatively. So when you do that as a ritual, just like your rituals for peak performance, when you do all those things like rituals over and over, it's that whole wiring and making the whole neural network thing, then you can come up with ways of associating something quick with it. A word, like you have a trigger point, you could push here, you can even have
and
like
by
a
the
little
way,
symbol.
if you're listening and you didn't see where Dr. Lopez pushed, it was
Yeah.
right on the inside between her thumb and her forefinger overall. right in that gap there,
Yes.
that like web area.
So there's, or even just pressing your fingers together. But the idea is like when you're doing these things as part of your like daily rituals, you then associate it with pressing your fingers together, pressing this trigger point, a word in your mind like calm or aromatherapy, something like that. So then again, when you're out there, you can bring it back very quickly by pressing your fingers, pushing this trigger point, smelling the lavender or the whatever it was that you were smelling before. So anyway, it's a way of trying to come up with something quick so you can bring back peak performance, you can bring back calmness. You can pretty much do this with anything, but these are kind of like the two spectrums that I deal a lot with.
Yeah, we had Dan Fagella on, and he is an expert at skill development. He talked about something similar in the second segment of the shows. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that show, you can go to growthtofreedom.com/25. And, he talked about the idea that, when athletes, when they're shooting free throws, they go through the certain rituals so they can block out the space, right? It puts them, they can concentrate, and now they get into a certain rhythm.
Yeah.
And they've practiced this, hundreds, if not thousands of times. So talk about your favorite rituals, like for you. You're an expert, you're a doctor, you're around all of this, you've worked with thousands of patients. What are some of the little triggers, rituals that you personally use to put yourself in a better state for success, meeting the needs, certainty, confidence, variety, at the same time, love, connection, significance, growth, mastery, contribution, those types of things.
Mm-hmm. Just those things.
Just those.
Just those few things.
Yeah, just those few.
Well, it's the same things that I teach people. So I have a certain kind of framework that I help everybody with, which is peace, which is helping them be mindful of, being very aware of yourself in all of these certain ways. Okay, so physiology. So P is for physiology, and E is for your emotion, and then A is for your behaviors, like your observable behaviors or actions. So A is actions, observable behaviors. C is your cognitions. So this is your thoughts. It's other things too, like perception, judgment, but really your thoughts. And then I have the last E, which is like this extra sensory kind of category. So there's multiple things in here. There's energy. So not only yours, but others, because some people are pretty attuned to that. Others are not. Intuition, same thing. A lot of people aren't necessarily attuned to their own intuition, but that's another great area of information. And then spirituality. So that's a framework that I use with everybody about being very aware of yourself in all of those ways. Once you do that, you practice that, it becomes automatic. Because all of these like little quick tips or strategies, even though they seem like they're quick tips and strategies, they actually need a lot of build up to get them to be quick tips and strategies.
In other words, it needs a framework.
Yes.
It needs a foundation, like with a house, right? If you build a great house on this, terrible plot, essentially a strong wind or storm can come around and wipe it right out.
Or if you have no foundation, then you're like that boat again, floating out there without direction. So I teach all of these like foundational things. Then you can use them for quick ways of helping yourself, because once you go through that, it becomes really automatic. So then again, basically like when something happens, it's very quickly where I can assess all of that stuff and this, something happened, like an external event happened, and then what? This thought like popped in my mind that could be like going to the way of what? An anxiety type thing. Or I could feel like physiologically like, here it comes or whatever. Okay, so being aware of all that, then it's like, okay, quick. I can do something then, just as I'm aware of it, like the goal is like, just as you're aware of it, how do I then make an intervention basically to switch it? No to that thought. Let that one kind of float away, because, hey, this is the thought that I need, or that's going to help me here.
And one of the things I really appreciate about you and the work that we've done is that, I think therapy in many cases gets a bad rap from the outside in. And part of that is because it's at least perceived that it takes so long to go through all these journeys, if you will. Whereas what I appreciate about you is that you're very real about it, that of course there's a foundational period, of course it takes work, but your work is more about making it feels like anyway, that you help people create a set of strategies, a set of tools that help them become independent of needing a doctor, needing therapy. But those things are just an extra support, like your peace strategy. If I've got it correct, it's physical, emotional, actions, cognitions, and then extrasensory pieces. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so those are foundational tools you can put in place right now and be mindful of, be thoughtful of, be aware of, to be able to build from. So diving back into the steps of, essentially goal achieving. We left off the last segment of this episode with the idea that, when you get to a place where it's a must, not a should, and then, going, yeah, I can do this. Because, isn't it interesting that people set themselves up for failure, right? Oh, I'm gonna run a marathon, but they've never even run like 50 yards before, right? And I'm going to do that next week, right? Yeah. I've got a friend of mine I'm thinking of right now who's kind of in that boat, and I'm like, my God. No. And so what would you say to someone to address those things? Like, how do you go from maybe a wish to a must, right, overall, to get that emotional charge? And then two, how to set up the, I can do this versus it being such an insurmountable, Brian Tracy, as I recall, had a quote, there's no such thing as unreasonable goal, only unreasonable deadlines.
Right, yeah.
To achieve those goals. Yeah. And, that's stuck with me for many, many years. So I know when we come back, I'd really like to dive in. We got a little bit off track, but, as you're watching right now, as you're listening, I mean, would you like to put yourself in a state of calm? Would you like to have a foundation of peace? Physical, emotion, actions, cognitions, extrasensory energies to be able to tap into at any time, right? Well, you can give yourself that gift when you have the tools and you have the strategies to be able to apply it, right?
Because they are there, but you can now master access to it and what you do with it.
And that's what we want to show you how to do. We want to show you how to get access to mastery, for growth, a ticket to freedom, because that's what it's all about, peace and freedom. So when we come back, we'll have more with Dr. Cristy Lopez on growthtofreedom.com. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com. Are you ready to be wired for greater success? Let's summarize the first two segments of the show. We've been talking about physiology. We've been talking about integrating psychology. We've been talking about the foundation for peace. Physical, emotion, actions, cognitive thought, extrasensory, intuition, things that you can build into your rituals, your routines. We've been talking about how are you conditioned. We've been talking about, identifying your characteristics of your favorite superhero, and we're going to tie that back in the final segment of the show in just a little bit, and the importance of that. We've been talking about language, the importance of using language, the difference even something as simple as it might sound, goal setting versus goal achieving. Just that simple paradigm shift as you think about it will allow you to start building momentum towards really accomplishment, achievement, attaining what it is that you want instead of just always setting it, right?
Right.
And that leads us into the next step. I know we've got 6 steps, and we're going to do our best to cover this in an effective period of time. But I think, you talked about how to put yourself in a calm state in chaos, right? In the last segment of the show as well. So dive in. Someone shifts, they go, okay, I'm going to be a goal achiever versus a goal setter.
Yes.
Now what?
So they decide that. So a lot of this, so the beginning part again is mindset. So a lot of that is very cognitive and language. Okay, so you're deciding that this is the case. You're deciding and understanding, okay, it's not necessarily just the outcome, it's the journey there too. It's making this real, a big piece of your brain, the real estate of it for this goal achievement bigger. So you want a good piece of real estate in your brain, which is your neural network. So you're doing all of this kind of like cognitive mindset work first. Then you also need to infuse emotion into it. Okay, so that would be the next thing then. And a really good way of doing that is to really visualize, what would life be like once I've achieved this goal or I'm living this goal? Because really, again, part of the mindset is this is like lifestyle, not just, a thing out there that, once in a while or whatever. It's a lifestyle. So once you get all the cognitive part together, then you add your emotional part to it and you really infuse your emotion to it. Emotion is critical for your thinking. Okay, so these things all rely on each other. They all work together. So you really, really feel those feelings of what it would be like to have a life like this when you are achieving this goal. Have those feelings, be able to be with those feelings. So you have a cognitive mindset and then you infuse emotion into it.
And so, if I could parlay this, I mean, there are a couple ways to be able to do that. You can do this sitting down and meditating about it. You can do it to visualizing it. I do it actually when I exercise. I also do it, I write these things out. I do it at dinner. So I'm doing these, as I'm thinking about what you're saying, I'm actually doing this now several times a day, actually, overall, in different ways. So it's not just thinking about it. It's not even just writing about it. But even when I'm exercising, there's a bit like, for example, I'm thinking of one. Like I use what I refer to as declarations, right? Okay, because there's the Declaration of Independence, not the Affirmation of Independence, and not the, you know what I mean, right? So what are your declarations? What are you emotionally committed to achieving? So like one of mine that I use on a daily basis is all the confidence I need is within me now.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Which ties into the some of the needs, right? And I do those that are related to my needs. Now, if I go, well, all the confidence I need is within me now.
Yeah, right.
Well, that is not an emotional connect. Now, I like doing this when I'm exercising.
Yeah.
So I'm exercising and I'm saying it out loud. And I go, all the confidence I need is within me now.
Awesome. And your physiology is going.
And it's building up, right?
Yes.
Another one that I do is all the courage I need is within me now, right?
Yes.
All the joy I need is within me now, right? All the influence I need is within me now. The ability to lead is within me now. So these are little declarations I use every day, right? That I find work for me, right?
Yeah.
I also find myself writing these things. What am I grateful for? What am I happy about? We've talked about that on previous episodes. So, we're infusing that emotion. And I want to encourage you as you think about that is not just to think on it or meditate on it, but what can you do with your physiology to do it?
Yeah, with everything, your energy, all of these peace things, your thoughts, your behaviors, your posture, all this stuff, put it all into it.
Yeah, and get into it.
Yes.
Really get into it.
Yeah, be in it.
That's right. That's right. And as corny as it may sound,
I know.
I mean, I even do it driving in my car, right? When I haven't been able to do it exercise, when I'm driving. In fact, on my way here today, because I was listening to some other stuff in my exercise, and I cut it a little bit short for our show today. And on my drive, I'm doing these declarations on the way.
Plus, you got your underdog song.
And I have my here I am to save the day.
So I just wanted you to do it again.
I know you did. You make me sound like a dork. I'm kidding. Yeah. I guess you can't make me feel anyway. Anyway, that's
a whole other show.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, emotional infusion. What's the next step?
So preparing for success. So you got to find out, hey, is there anything that's going to throw a wrench into this plan? Because I need to be aware of it, and I need to know what to do with it. Is there any additional skills I need to learn to be able to do that? It's like your friend. He can't just go from zero to marathon runner. So there's plenty more, but I'm sure we'll get into it in the next segment.
Yes, so prepare for success, infuse emotion, and also decide to be a goal achiever. We're going to cover that and a whole lot more with Dr. Cristy Lopez on growthtofreedom.com. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground today. In fact, we've been talking about helping you get wired for greater success. I mean, if you feel like right now maybe you're not where you want to be, we want to show you how to get wired for ultimate success, ultimate peak performance. So we have covered a lot. You can go check out this episode at growthtofreedom.com/26. And I want to dive right back into it. And by the way, at the opening of the show, I talked about your hero characteristics, your favorite superhero, and what are the characteristics of that superhero you admire most. Now, if you go at a deeper level here, what I will challenge you to realize is that all those characteristics that you admire about that superhero are the things that you would likely admire about yourself overall, right? Now, obviously, it's not about flying and it's not about seeing through walls and all of those types of things, but it's the characteristics. And I want to challenge you to realize that there's a hero inside of you and a seed of potential, a seed of greatness just waiting to come out, to be able to go out and whether it starts at home and impact and influencing those around you or your community or the city, the state, or the world. There's a story inside of you, there's a song to sing, and there's a hero inside of you too. And I want to challenge you to really hone in on that. And Dr. Lopez has been talking about why some people achieve goals and some don't. And we've been talking about the steps of number one, decide to be a goal achiever, not a goal setter. We've been talking about emotional infusion. We've been talking about preparing for success. So pick it up from there. What are the next steps in preparing for success?
So this one is a really big one for me as far as preparing for success, which is time, scheduling the time for it. Because if you don't actually physically schedule the time and even put it in your calendar or whatever you're keeping track of your schedule, then that usually will fall away or you don't really see it. And, I'm not sure if other people have this, but I think maybe women may more so. But a lot of what I do is like for others. So I have a lot of things that I'm doing that's like to benefit other people. So a lot of times when my schedule is often very, very full. So when it kind of comes down to it in my mind of like, oh, this was for me and this is for, this client, or this is for this organization or for other people, then yeah, I tend to be like, well, let me take the me schedule out because, this is for the other people. So I know a lot of this stuff, it's easy to say and it's harder to do. And this is one of my things. So really schedule the time and try not to kick it out for something else. So that's another kind of tip on preparing for success.
And I know that what I do today is, I wake up, first thing I do is I go into, I think Sean Stevenson, who I had a conversation with about this, his term for this is self-care. Mm-hmm. And if you don't make the time for yourself, why should anybody else? Mm-hmm. And if you don't care enough about you, why should anybody else? No matter what you're pursuing, whatever career path you're in. Mm-hmm. So what are the things that are going to set you up to win, right? Yeah. And so I start off with exercise in the morning and I do my declarations while I'm exercising, then I follow that usually with writing, right? And so in that first hour of my day, I have gotten a very solid base of self-care, if you will, or in this case, preparing for success, that foundation, or building the foundation as you talk about for peace, because essentially as I think about it, in that hour of what I'm doing, I'm building peace. I'm getting my physical state, emotional actions, my cognitive, my thoughts, visualization, and extrasensory. I'm getting intuition involved as I go through the process of doing that as well. Yeah. So let's say we're prepared for success. We understand the importance of emotional infusion, right? And bring psychology and physiology together. We're a goal achiever. What's the next step?
Okay, so this is another one of my big things. Okay, so it's making it automatic and routine. So now this is more the behavioral part. So we've talked about cognitive part and emotional and energy and those kinds of things. And then now this is more like the behavioral part. So one of them is, and I think you actually mentioned this, which is writing this out every day. Because usually what people will do is they'll write their goals once when they very first start, and then that's it. And who even knows where it is? But if you actually, and then handwrite, don't type, handwrite it. Because there's like the neuro connection there. So when you handwrite your goals every single day, then that reminds you every single day of like, oh, this is what I'm achieving, and doing in that way if I'm achieving this, X. So you're writing it every single day. That also helps. That's like a routine that helps you get going into it. And then this one about don't make it a decision. So this is one of the ones that I also found like, hey, this one's really helpful because especially, me, I can be very good at doing the rationalization, justification, like all of the things that people do. And maybe because of my profession, like I really know how to do them. so I can, that'll pop in my own mind myself. I'm like, oh, okay, well, wait a minute. I can rationalize this thing because, look at these other people. Okay. Or once I've done it, oh, I could justify this thing because, oh, look at the other people, or like, so if you take decision making off the table, you can't even rationalize or justify then because you don't even have that opportunity. So take away the opportunity to rationalize and justify by just, hey, if I'm deciding to do this, this is what I decided. There's no decision here. If I have this financial goal and I have this budget, there's no decision on can I buy this thing or not because it's already predetermined. And then once you take that decision making out, that really does wonders for you.
And so another way that you could look at that, if I hear you correctly, is setting boundaries, right?
Yeah.
So, you brought up a budget. So essentially a budget helps you create the boundaries for good decision making as it relates to finance, for exercise. Why do I schedule mine at, like between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning is because it creates a boundary and a platform that's, at this moment, that's Dan time, right?
Yes, yeah.
When it cools off a little bit, it's been, about 115 degrees for about whatever, 2 or 3 weeks straight here. T and I will get back to doing our walks at night, but when we do those walks at night with the kids and together, that's also creating the boundaries that we're working in to be able to do these things. In other words, in your platform of peace, PEACE, right? So what do you find are some of the, I guess, strategies, if you will, that people can set up a better method to win, or what are some of the common challenges or dangers that pop up? And, whether people, they start down the path of success and then maybe they fall off the wagon, if you will.
Yeah.
What are your strategies for dealing with that? So that, I don't know if you're watching right now or listening, but I've had good momentum and then I get off track, right? And I fall off the wagon and then I want to beat myself up and then I hang out there for probably longer than I need to.
Right.
So, and I'm sure you've dealt with that with the thousands of clients you've worked with. So speak to that, because A, it's normal, right?
Right, yes.
And B, what can you do to
not only is it normal,
move through it?
You need to know to expect it, because it is going to happen. So once you expect that it's going to happen, then you come up with basically like a relapse plan, okay, or a recovery plan, or how do I get back into my routine plan. So this is another one of these really big ones, because if you just expect that it's going to happen and then you have a plan for when it happens, don't go through all of that, what you just did, which is what people do. Oh no, and then you beat yourself up for it, and then your lapse is like way longer than it needs to be, because really it's, oh, okay, so as I expected, I fell off the wagon here for this time. Okay, so what is my relapse plan? What's my recovery plan? Let me get back going on it. And that's okay. That's normal. That's natural. That's human.
And it's interesting, because I had a mentor years ago, Dr. Lopez, that said you can tell the size of the person by the obstacles it takes to knock them off track. And he used to draw this, this model, and he talked about, it was a graph that successful people are, kind of like this overall, but success isn't a straight line, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then what happened is, what successful people seem to do is, what maybe 10 years ago would knock me off track emotionally, right? And take me out for a week. Today, it might take me out for a minute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest difference. I think this speaks to that model, is condensing the time frames. Number one, be aware that it's going to happen.
Right.
Be prepared that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Be accepting that it's going
Yes.
to embrace the fact that it's actually going to happen. In fact, you might even, as you prepare any plan that you're looking to do a goal achievement, is anticipate what is likely to happen as far as me getting off track.
Yeah.
And embrace it and know that it's coming. And then when it does, now you're going to work on your relapse plan, as I think you're calling it, right? Or your recovery plan to minimize, so it doesn't take you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that it might just take 5 minutes. You deal with it and move on.
Right. And that's for anything that you're working towards, because this comes up a lot, in therapy or in the coaching arena. And so the way I tell people is it's like the stock market. It's going to go up and down, but hopefully the idea is it's trending the right way. So as soon as you hit your first down, I don't want you to just like throw your hands up and be like, oh, forget it. No, know that it's going to happen. And then how do we deal with this? Because I primarily have these 3 phases that I teach everybody about: prevention, intervention, because stuff's going to happen and you're going to need to know how to deal with it, and then the recovery plan. So how do I recover? Okay, so
prevention, intervention, and recovery.
Yes, and you have to learn all those things. So that's why I tell people, it wouldn't even be good for you while we're working to just be like, oh, because you need to learn how to deal with it. You need to learn when there's a stressor that comes in, how do I intervene on it, okay? Then when I completely get off track, how do I get back on track? How do I recover? So you actually really need the skills for all those things: prevention, intervention, and recovery. Okay. So back to our other things to help you here when you're on your path of achieving your goals. Do set up ahead of time what kind of rewards, okay, external ones and internal ones. What kind of rewards are you going to have to help yourself, to keep motivating yourself, to keep you going? So there can be some external things, but they have to make sense. Okay, so if you're doing some kind of like diet plan, don't reward yourself by then having a big binge fest or something. If you're doing something financial,
we shouldn't have velvet cheesecake at the Cheesecake Factory, should we?
Shoot. Yeah. Oops. Okay. And if you're doing a budget thing, don't reward yourself by then going on a shopping spree. Okay. So they have to make sense what your external rewards are, but really it's your internal rewards. Okay. Really be in touch in all of those ways, like feel it emotionally, energetically, physiologically, like feel what those rewards are, because that's and really this is the most powerful one, because what all these things are doing is coming down to chemicals. When you eat, when you spend, that's chemicals. You can do the same thing without the eating and the spend. Okay, so you're bringing your physiology and your chemicals back into it.
And in fact, that's what being in a peak state is all about,
right,
because it's really firing into that, that energy, those neurons. the chemicals that are actually building into what we feel and how we feel. And guess what? Something as simple as dum da da dum, here I am to save the day.
You know what?
The underdog pose.
There needs to be some sort of game out there that people do, like every time you.
Yeah, maybe we could create a hashtag, here I am to save the day, because you know what? You are a hero. Now, by the way, when people put the peace plan in place and have that foundation and put these 6 steps that you've just laid out, right? As far as number 1, being a goal achiever. Number 2, infusing emotion. 3, prepare for success. Number 4, create automatic and routines, right? Number 5 is the ability to go out there and prepare for the relapse. And number 6 are the rewards. So when people do this, what do you see as far as the outcome that people experience? What does it do for them? What does it give them?
Well, most people are better able to actually now take on the lifestyle that they were trying to do. Okay. And again, that's how you're talking about it and thinking about it, is what it is. And there's so many areas in your life. So you can kind of go through all of these things for various different areas in your life. It may be harder to try and do them all at once. Sometimes people will do it like one area and then another area, and which is also kind of a way of building efficacy, and you're practicing and you're knowing how to do this, and then you can kind of move it on to maybe a harder area of your life. So if, the eating thing or the health exercise is harder, but the financial one, maybe you think you got a better hold on that one, then practice it with the financial one and then move on to the eating one or the physical one or the business or the relationship or the whatever it is that you're doing. But it gives you a framework and a system, and it makes it automatic, so that you can then, it's your routine and it's your ritual, it's your way of being, versus, there's this thing I do once a year. New Year's resolution. Right. Okay, here's this goal, whatever. Good luck.
And you know what? And that's what this show is all about, to bring you strategies for greater mastery, growth, freedom, and as you talk about it, peace. And you know what? Time flies.
Yep.
That's the show for today. And you know what? We want you to be able to get in touch with Dr. Lopez. Go check out the site at growthtofreedom.com/26 to learn more about her, how to contact her, work with her. She has incredible coaching, mentoring that she provides. Also, I know I feel better by having you here. I hope we'll do this again really, really soon. And if you're watching right now, you've been inspired in some way. I hope you'll repeat after me. I'm a winner. I'm a champion. I'm a hero. I deserve it. I'm the best. And you know what? You do. Find a collaboration group, find a mastermind group, find a coaching group, and seize the day. Make it a great week. We'll see you next time on growthtofreedom.com.